a small number of lines that were allowed under Bush. Do you know how many more lines were added under Obama, or how many lines are currently being used right now?
I do not.
I wouldn't research that part.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
We'll bring you back tomorrow. You can tell us the answer.
Well, it wasn't as many as I thought.
No,
I mean,
it's
that
very
has been
small.
significant.
It's not.
It's
Yeah,
very
it's not as
small.
many, and of course,
I want to say
like
like from 3 to 8 or something. I mean, but
yeah,
Very tiny.
and it's very hard to even get the line because like when they're doing the process in the lab, like sometimes they'll just spontaneously differentiate and they can't be used. So there's that.
where is most of the stem cell research going on in the United States right now?
I don't know like where the most is, but it's pretty much all over the country. Even like Harvard. Even
locally, UK
locally,
is doing
like
some hard
UK,
studies.
University of Louisville just got like a new grant, like $13.8 million to do stem cell research. And even like in Greenville, Kentucky, there's a dentistry that they take your teeth, they take your teeth for stem cell, which I thought was kind of cool.
Well, I was going to say that's another place. They used to say save your baby teeth, your kids' baby teeth,
Yeah.
so you could get the stem cells out of those. So when you say, so U of L or UK is doing research on stem cells, do you know specifically what area, what they're trying to do with it?
Well, I know UK, I think they were doing cardiac stem cells and things like that. That's one of the articles I read. And I think there was another one in 2012 that UK did with stroke victims, a clinical trial.
Yeah, most of them are based towards clinical, like how to treat patients better. Yeah, it's about patient care. Those kinds of things.
So when you receive stem cells, is that through an injection or is it a pill you take or
It's an injection.
into the specific location where?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I'm not really sure, but I think it's kind of biopsy, but you inject stuff instead of taking things out.
Okay. Is there any hope that it could help amputees, like grow a new limb?
That's interesting. But I didn't specifically read any like ongoing research right now about that, but that might be maybe way down the line.
It's probably possible because like the ear grow from the mouse, that's how they
Yeah.
it's possible, but maybe nobody's doing it.
What about skin grafts?
Yes, there was a really cool thing that Harvard did, and these like boys were to fire, and like 80% of their skin was burned off. So they took like some of their skin cells, and they like made skin grafts, and they like put it all over their body, and like the skin grafts would like grow into each other. So that was really cool. The only thing was is they didn't have like hair follicles or like sweat glands.
That was done from stem cells.
Right.
Because I'm sorry, the skin cells really generate very fast.
Yes.
And there's not that much risk involved. It's not like a heart or liver. So a lot of the research starts from those skin cells.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about this. This is fascinating to me, the injecting of the cells and they become what you need them to become. How do I know that when I inject a stem cell, we'll say into a heart muscle that we're trying to rebuild, that it's going to become a heart muscle and not an ear or a fingernail or something? How does it, I mean, do I just put it there and it figures it out for itself, or is there some chemical stimulation we have to do to those cells to get them to do certain things?
From like in the lab, I read to change like with like the chemical composition, alter the surface of the petri dish, or like modify the cells by inserting specific genes. So that's kind of how they do that.
The way I envision is you first in the petri dish you grow some muscle first, and then you put it in instead of you leave it on your heart and let it grow itself. And that's really dangerous because it can cause tumors because it will just grow itself and indefinitely, and that's the problem. But if you control it in the lab and then either surgically put it there or inject it on your healthy tissue, that's more.
So we're growing these in the lab, we're growing these in a dish. What's in this dish? Is there like a medium in that dish that they're growing in? Is there a chemical that they grow in? If you just put cells in a dish, I'm pretty sure they're going to just die or dry up or something.
You use electrical shocks, I think, to stimulate them and to grow in a certain way. But all the technical details, I'm not sure with.
Okay.
But then the basic premises is you use some kind of like a mold, biomaterial. You use like I'm not sure, but it's like use a mold, and then you put cells on there, and they will grow into that shape, and then you would remove that all the tissue and then put it wherever you need it.
So if I was going to make an ear, maybe I would do the cells on something that's shaped like the ear so that it would grow into that shape.
Yeah, because 3D printing really helps too, because you can
Mhm.
make mold and then put cells on there and they will grow like that shape.
Doesn't have to get that. Maybe the only part I understood was the 3D printing. I know what that is. Okay, good deal. All right.
So Mary Shelley was way ahead of her time then.
Yes. Dig up dead bodies for this one though.
You guys mentioned in your little paragraph that you did find some related topics in the Bible to stem cell research. Can you share a bit about what you found there?
We mainly looked at how the Bible talks about healing. Like Jesus' ministry was to, like in Matthew's, they talk about how he went out and healed many people, and he asked his disciples to do the same thing too. That's what we think the main idea about stem cell research is to cure more patients instead of doing some crazy Frankenstein stuff. But it didn't directly talk about, like, the controversy would be destroy life. That's not the thing. But then for the healing part, that's what we agree with.
So there hasn't been any controversy about humans in the role of playing God, in the sense that we are playing around with genes, modifying, changing genes, or even, growing new body parts.
I don't think so. 'Cause I think the only real controversy lies in like embryonic is destroying life. Or
I don't think we're creating new things. It's basically creating what we have. Like it's kind of like regenerate what we already have instead of creating new organs or new stuff.
yes.
Do you see a point where it could be used for less therapeutic reasons?
Less.
Well, you talked about the mold and putting in there, and I'm going, can I get a new straighter nose or something that you could grow
they
like
already
that?
they already have used it for like plastic surgery. Like there was one study I read about that, like for bags of your eyes, they injected stem cells, but like it was not FDA regulated, so the cells didn't differentiate right. So instead of stem cells, they grew bones.
Oh.
So they had to surgically remove it. So they didn't like surgically remove it. So yeah, they have used it for
Yes,
plastic surgery,
yes.
but like those are not FDA.
Right, and so I'm just wondering how far the sort of the ethical debate goes on what we should be using stem cell research for, or the technology that comes from it, or not.
Since we already have plastic surgery, and we know people want to
Right.
improve their physical appearance.
Let's say change.
Yes. Yes. And that's definitely, people will use it for that, but I don't think there's any rules that regulates.
It's like in the private sector, if you want to do that, you can.
Yeah, and stem cell is different from like gene editing, like improve your height.
But I do sort of see the two working together, because you
They're
do
very
alter the genes when working with that, and so I'm aware of sort of that gene editing to get the right eye color or the height or something like that, and that causes concern for me, and so I'm
Yeah.
just wondering how much carryover there might be.
I agree with that would cause concern for me, because like, well, in Bible I studied eugenics, and that's kind of, I think, with gene editing in that way goes along with that. So I would hope that there would be like legislation against
Mhm.
gene
And
editing.
it seems like those two are very similar, but actually it's very different.
Okay, because
Yeah.
in my mind, I am closer
yeah,
together.
Yeah.
They're pretty, yeah.
Okay, and so you talked about the main side effect of pluripotent or induced pluripotent cells, or some of this other, is tumors coming up. Are those cancerous tumors or just tumors?
Some of them can be cancerous, but most of them, I think, is just
They're typically benign.
Are there any other side effects or concerns from treatment with?
most side effects would just be tumor.
Okay.
And because if you want them to grow, then you don't tell them where to stop.
Where to
They'll
stop,
just
yeah.
keep growing.
Yeah.
And that's
Yes.
that's the most commonly defect.
And there's also the host graft disease. Like that can happen where your body attacks. So kind of like when an organ transplant, you would have to take drugs so your body wouldn't attack it because it's not familiar.
What did you call it again?
Graft versus host disease.
Okay.
Yeah, especially this rejection, and it comes from, I think, mainly embryonic stem cells. It's
Yeah.
just not real. So.
that your body's reacting to it as a foreign thing,
Yes.
kind of like an autoimmune disorder,
Yes.
where it then attacks it.
And so I'm interested, so you said you said some of the work that's actually being done is a lot with blood work, and that's your whole body, so there's not any rejection issues with that or tumor issues with the blood treatments?
Not well, because that deals with adult stem cells, so it's
But it may not, like if I'm getting a blood treatment from the
Yes.
adult stem cell, is it from my stem cells or someone else's?
Something else I've heard is like a bone marrow transplantation. They use you find a match first, like
Right.
a blood type and things, and then you would transfer someone else's bone marrow to yourself, so you can make your own healthy blood.
Right.
And there's definitely rejections happening, but then if you find a perfect match or as close as we can get, and then you just keep taking medicines. It's kind of like organ transplant.
Okay.
Is there an ethical difference in, let's say I've got a heart that my mitral valve collapses, it's not doing its job. They come up with stem cell research where I could regenerate a healthy mitral valve versus a little boy that's born with nothing below his elbow, and you're able to generate a new forearm, hand, fingers. Is there a difference ethically there?
For me personally, I don't think there's a difference, because you want to treat a patient to the full extent of their ability to improve their quality of life. And if you're born innately without any body parts, I mean, that you're supposed to have, or something that's happened to be defective, I think it's all the same. You try to treat them to better their quality of life. What do you think?
I would agree, like, because that's what, that's the hope with stem cell, is just to improve the quality of life. So I think that's, in both situations, that's what it's doing.
And like salamanders, the idea we got from stem cells, how salamanders can grow their limbs and their different body parts, that scientists would think like when they do undergrowth, we can do the same thing with our patients.
This is before your all's time, but Jim Abbott was a major league pitcher that basically had no hand. So he threw left-handed, took his glove off, put it back on while the ball was in flight to home plate. You know, who's to say God wanted Jim Abbott to be just that way? And now we go and tinker and say, no, we're going to add a hand to Jim Abbott and see if we've taken away, in some sense, we've kind of taken away his testimony of who he is and how God created him. You know, you ever think through that part of it?
Yeah, it comes to like the society thinks, what is normal? Is with two hands normal, or is it one hand is normal? That will always change. But I think what we're working towards is to build like healthy human beings. Like when we couldn't treat pancreatic, like diabetes, we wouldn't just say, oh, okay, that's normal. We just can't deal with it. But then if the medicine comes out, we try to use it and try to extend your life and try to make the quality of life better.
Something you mentioned salamanders, but when we're talking stem cells, is the only research being done on human stem cells, or are we actually looking at animals or pets to see if that can help us?
Yeah, so, but like in like clinical trials, like you have to go through animals before you can move to humans. And I thought there was a cool thing about that, like in Hungary, there was a Siberian tiger who had a bad hip, so they injected stem cells to try to improve that, like just recently. So they are doing things on animals.
Did it help?
I'm not sure. It happened like April 23rd, so it was very
So
recent.
We always go for animal trials, and
Yes.
a little limited human trials, and maybe to the general public.
Yes, so it, like, and especially mice is what they use to do.
Because genetically we're very similar with the platforms.
How do you feel about animal embryonic stem cell research versus human embryonic stem cell research? Is there a trade-off? If you're against maybe destroying embryos, creating embryos just to destroy embryos from humans, and I think I heard that as we were kind of going through our discussions, would you equally be against creating animal embryos just to destroy them to do embryonic stem cell research on animals?
I wouldn't be against that because animals are used a lot for our benefit, and I think I don't really see an issue.
Well, we can, I mean, I don't know if anyone, but like animal we eat them. We
Right.
do a lot of things to them.
Yeah.
And God said you can, all these animals, you can eat them. And he didn't say you can do research on them, but
Yeah.
we kind of, we use them and we spent them, but we're not eating them, but we're doing research to heal people. And that's, I think it's acceptable.
That's exactly what I was going for. Critical. Ma'am.
Oh yeah, I was like, God created us to rule over the animals.
But did you find it all? And maybe you haven't, but I can see where organizations like PETA get really upset about this.
Yes.
So is it
Yes.
just as controversial doing the research on animals as it is doing it on humans to an extent?
I didn't find anything on it.
Yeah, we didn't look into the
I didn't really look
Right.
into the controversy, but they act like
There definitely is like people against using it as
Right.
for experimental purposes, but then we just didn't look into it.
Let's go back to the beginning of this discussion. We talked about embryonic stem cells and IVF and using those embryos for the stem cell research, right? Could people benefit financially from donating embryos for stem cell research? So if I have embryos and I'm not going to use them, can I sell them to a lab? We talked about them being abandoned and them taking them over and using them, but can I benefit financially from that?
I am not sure, but most of the places where it's donated typically. I did not read anything about selling. Usually, I feel like that's not how it's done, but I can't say that for sure.
Yeah, I think there's, if not a rule, there will be a rule about against selling your stem cells. It's just kind of like sell your blood and selling parts of it.
Right.
It's
Right, I can't sell Kevin a kidney if he needs one. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
outlawed.
And
Now
I
I could
think-
donate a kidney to Kevin, but I
Right, and I
can't
think
sell.
that would-
Not that I wouldn't give you a kidney.
That would
Kevin.
encourage just creating embryos to destroy.
Well,
So,
we believe they're people. We
Right.
there's always black
Sell
market and
people.
ways to
Yes, there's-
get financial
there's
benefits.
always-
But
yeah, it's typically donated.
Do either of you have interest in pursuing this kind of research at some point?
No, it's too hard.
I'm thinking about going to the medical field, but mainly clinical part of it. But research, this is very interesting, but I'm not sure if I would devote my life for it. But I would definitely be interested in what we can become.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a good idea. There was a study I read about there's a new study about autism and how they're combining stem cell research with psychology and combining that. So I just think that's cool. There's just so many different directions that it's going.
Well, Laura Beth, you have a real passion for Down syndrome stuff too, so it's
Yeah.
Are there, and this is not on topic, and so you shouldn't feel like you have to have an answer for it, but are you aware of any other advancements or potential advancements in the medical field that kind of are as exciting right now as stem cell research?
There's a thing called CRISPR technology. It's like to edit your genomes. That can involve change your eye color or change your height. That's more like gene editing, and that's pretty new technology as well. Basically, to find our chromosomes and which gene is specifically for what part of the body and for what job. And you can find it, either cut it or edit it and put new things into it. And that's more controversial. But that's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting for me to hear how exciting research is of all the things that might happen with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But then to find out what actually has happened so far
Right.
is not much.
And
So
it's also, everything I've read, it's not like with heart attacks, it's not like it completely gets rid of scar tissue. It just helps reduce it. Or even with eyes, it doesn't make, if you have blindness, it doesn't help you completely see again. It just helps you to maybe see a little better. That's kind of, I think, where it's at.
So do you feel like sort of, at least in the mainstream media, it gets a little bit
I think it
overhyped?
gets too much hype,
Yes, we're
for sure.
thinking about problem way far in the future. But
Yes.
so far, we're still in the very
There's
early stage.
a lot. And it's the more we discover, the less we know. And I think that's definitely true for stem cells.
Or do you think it, and to Mrs. Adler's point, is it important to go ahead and put a stake in the ground now, because you're setting precedent, and I know in the law, and this is not as much as I know about the law, precedent carries a lot of weight. What did you do before? What